Okay, so the first important point in the success to selling is that we're all in sales. I think too many people are intimidated by sales, in large part purely because of the fear of rejection. And many others think that it's, sleazy boiler room tactics and tricks, and the reality is that it isn't scary, it isn't sleazy. It's really grounded in all the activities that we do every day. So if we want to take our partner out for a meal, or we want to encourage the children to go to school, we're really all in that business of selling. And it's a skill we can learn, and as long as you have the right mindset. And good sales starts with confidence and in yourself and in your product. And you can develop step-by-step processes for selling, and hopefully over the next few videos we'll be able to teach you that. And also you've got to remember sometimes it's important just to be passionate about what you sell as well. There's a great quote from Peter Thiel, who was one of the co-founders of PayPal with Elon Musk, and also an original investor in Xero and in Facebook. And he said, just imagine that you're actually sitting in a room just like this office here, and you've just started your small business, or you're an entrepreneur that's just started a startup, and you look around and you're on your own. Well, the reality is you're in sales. The second key to success in selling is having the right mindset. So what is mindset in the context of selling? Well, there are two. The first mindset is your belief in yourself, so your attitude towards selling. The second one is your attitude towards selling the product that you have, and can you actually sell it? There's a great book written by Carol DeWerk called Mindset, and she believes when we learn, we can have two types of mindsets: a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. A fixed mindset is a permanent belief in something, inflexible, not prepared to change. Now, there's certain things in business that you have to be fixed, but in the case of selling and learning to sell, you have to have a belief around that. The second one is what we call our growth mindset. And growth mindset is really having the ability to be flexible and looking at things in a different way and asking yourself, well, what did I learn from this? I may not have got the sale today, but what did I learn from this, and how can I improve? So how does that manifest in selling? Well, a fixed mindset, people go, I can't sell, I've tried it once, it was really difficult, hard, people just said no all the time. With a growth mindset, even though people might say no, they still think to themselves, okay, well, what did I learn from this? What could I do next time? What could I do in my presentation? And that's really the difference, and that's the difference between success and failure when you're selling. So the important thing is to remember that if you want to learn to be better at sales, you've just got to have an open mind. And if you're really struggling and you still think you've got a fixed mindset, then you better find someone else who can sell. So this is our third key to success in selling, and it's what I call the insight. So it's really understanding your product and your customers. So in the context of selling, again, it's understanding who your customers are, what they do, how they operate, how they buy off you, how you sell to them. But more importantly, it's an opportunity for you to look internally at your products and your services and ask yourself, how am I selling this? What do I know about my customer? Is my product giving enough features and benefits? Because features tell people about a product, benefits sell the product. So it's really important to remember that you've really got to look internally at all your product offerings and get really clear on why people are buying them. Now, I know at NRS Media, we used to do this all the time. Every time we sold a product, we'd evaluate it, we'd look at it, we'd say, okay, why did that sell so well? Why didn't it sell so well? And we'd look at some of the weaknesses. So we used to do a simple SWOT analysis every time we introduced a new product, and every time we wanted to evaluate ourselves. So why didn't we sell that product? Why didn't that work? Opportunities in media, especially for us at the time, media was changing like crazy. So what were the opportunities? And also, what were the threats about our product? What were we not delivering? Was that salesperson that we had out in the field, amongst our 30 or 40, why weren't they selling? Were we training them enough? Were we looking after their needs? So really, in a lot of ways, you have to have lots of insight internally about what you're selling and what your product is. And if you can do that, that builds product knowledge. And if you have product knowledge, you have confidence. And confidence is a huge thing when you're selling anything. So the next key to success is finding your customer's path or needs. Now, when you go to present to a client or when you're working with a client, you really got to find out what their needs are. Now, there's a saying that we have in our company, and I've heard this before, is you've got to look for the need behind the need. So what's the need behind the need? And often it's an emotional decision. Most people, when they buy a product or service, they're buying the product, but they're actually buying what the product can do for them. It's like, what's the solution that you can provide me with your product? And you have to find out what drives that. And it's usually emotional. And the important thing to remember is behind every need is actually that emotional need. And so think about it for yourself. When you go to buy, say, a new shirt or a new suit or clothing, you buy it for lots of reasons. But what do you really buy it for? Because it looks great and people comment on that. So that's the emotional connection that you have to buying clothes. It's the same when you buy makeup or when you buy shoes. You know, I have some friends that just love shoes. And it's not the shoes, it's what the shoes will do for them and how they look and how they feel. So you've always got to look for the need behind the need. And you do that by asking lots of questions. And I'm going to cover that in the next session. So the next key to success in selling is the conversation. Now, I remember sitting in a seminar once and Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad, Poor Dad fame said a very powerful thing. And he said, the power is in the question. And for me, that's always resonated with me. And so when I talk about conversations and asking the right questions, as a salesperson or a person that's got a product or service, you have to understand what are the right questions to ask. Because once you ask the right questions of your client, they open up. But too many salespeople, all they want to do is sell them something. Blah, 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 blah. I've got this product, it's number one, it's the best product since sliced bread. I love it, you've got to buy it. In the end of the day, the client's looking across the table from you and thinking, hey, this person really isn't interested in what I've got. They're only interested in what they're selling. So the great salespeople I know are really curious and they ask lots and lots of questions. So the key is you've got to ask lots of questions and you've got to formulate the questions so you can get your client to open up. And once your client opens up, rapport happens. You start to get to know them and they get to know you. And what they may be thinking is, maybe I can work with this person because they're interested in me. And that's the important thing when you have a conversation with a client. They're getting to know you, you're getting to know them. So how do you put that into sales? Well, right now, one, you've got to formulate the right questions. Two, you've got to be prepared to listen. You've got to be prepared to close your mouth and open your ears. And that's the important thing. Because what happens is when you do that, you get lots of clues and you get facts. And you might even get a problem that they need solved. Because that's really what they're there for you to help them solve their problem and not solve your problem. So the next step in the key to selling successfully is presentation. So you've asked all the right questions and you're now having the opportunity to go back to your client and you might want to present a solution to that problem that you found out. A couple of things you need to remember. The first thing is be yourself. You have to be yourself. And the second thing is you have to be authentic. But if you've asked the right questions, you've found a problem that you need to solve, you've got that all written down and sitting in your presentation, then it's actually quite easy. Now, there's certain ways to present to clients. You can present what I call face-to-face, which is my favourite. The second one is you can present in an elevator pitches to people. You can present one-to-many. So there's lots of ways to do different presentations. And there's a great story that I had with NRS Media is that we put an elevator script together and we got our staff to go up and our senior leadership team to go up and down some elevators and present it to us. And when we finished and we came back into the room, we found out that most of them were completely different than what we'd given them. And so we realise that sometimes as we grow, you have to be really clear on what you're presenting. So systems and presentation systems and sales systems are really important as your business starts to grow. And I think that's what we realised when we were presenting our product to our clients. So presenting, it's natural and easy. That's the key things you need to believe in. And also, if you've got a problem that you've solved for them, then that's the opportunity to present to them. So the next key to success is negotiation. So you're in the negotiation. So the first thing you need to remember is every negotiation is different. You might be working with a client that you've worked for 12 months. You're going to go and present another product to them. It might just be a different negotiation process. I'll give you 3 tips that I use when I negotiate with people and just to get me ready and prepared for presenting to clients. The first one is I have to make sure that I have all my material, all my offers, all my contracts, everything that I need. And I'll give you an example of that. I travelled for 18 hours from Sydney across to Johannesburg to present to one of the biggest media companies in South Africa. Walked into their media company, into the boardroom, their senior leadership team sitting around the boardroom. Looked like they were really pleased to see us, and we were pretty excited about presenting our product. So we got everything set up. Halfway through the presentation, the CEO got up and said, "We love you guys. We want to work with you, and we want to work with you exclusively." And my business partner said to me, "Mike, let's get the contract out and let's tie this negotiation up." And I had to whisper back to him to say, "Hey, look, I've actually left the contract in the hotel. I actually didn't think that they wanted to, buy in straight away." Whispering, I might add. But I picked up the fact that they wanted exclusivity. So I said to the CEO, "Look, I know you want exclusivity. We have actually made a lot of appointments with a lot of other clients, so we're going to have to go back to the hotel and ring them. And in the meantime, we'll just tie up our clauses and come back to you in an hour. How does that sound?" "Fantastic, we'll see you in an hour." So we packed up all our gears and ran back to the hotel. And we signed that client up within an hour. And that client worked with us and invested millions and millions of dollars into our company. So that's the first tip. Be prepared. The second tip is to be in control. Often I see when I go with salespeople and I work with companies that they do a big presentation and they give out the presentation to all the people in the room. So what's the first thing they do? Back page, price. So that really blurs any opportunity you have to sell yourself, sell your product, sell the benefit, sell a solution. So be in control is meaning you give out the proposals at the end or any particular offers at the end. And the third one is overcoming objections or concerns inside the presentation. Now, most of us know that there's probably 5 or 6 common objections that come up every time we go to sell a product or service. Well, why not cover those in the presentation? Why not just cover those in the presentation where you can make sure that you overcome some of those objections before they ask them? So that's my third tip. Now, I've got some motivations that motivate clients to buy. And I've got 4 of them and I'll quickly go over those now. First one is what I call scarcity. If you can make your product scarce and there's only a limited offer and it's authentic, that's a great strategy because people will always buy what they can't have. The second one is what I call confirmation. And confirmation is essentially testimonials, references, referrals. So in other words, making sure that you have lots and lots of evidence that your product works. So for example, in NRS Media, whenever we used to do our sales seminars, we'd bring our clients in that had already bought, and halfway through the presentation we'd get them to stand up and explain to the audience how wonderful our product was. And 9 times out of 10, our increase of sales in the room would just go up. So that's really just getting about, again, people want to buy what other people have. The third one is exclusivity. So what drove that South African motivation was that they wanted exclusive opportunity to buy our products and services. All they wanted to do was cut the other guys out. And we gave that to them on certain criteria. And the final one is what I call pain and pleasure. Now, pain and pleasure is simply is if you don't buy my product or service, this is what may happen to your business. Or even realising that people are motivated by moving away from something, so pain, and moving towards a result. Because often is if you can show that you've identified a problem and you have a solution, and by using that solution they can get a result, that will certainly help you. So those are the motivations that sometimes come into play and are always in play often when you're negotiating. So the final step in the keys to successfully selling is what I call continuation. In other words, another name for customer service. So it's really important to stay in touch with your customers after the sale. So there's a great saying from Tony Shea, who runs Zappos, which is one of the biggest online shoe stores. He believes that customer service isn't a department, it's the entire company. There's a great story about the Amazon founder, Jeff Bezos, who talks about how to treat customers. And at every senior leadership team that he ran when he first started the business, he used to have a spare chair sitting in the corner. And the senior leaders would come in and they'd talk about, all the things that were important. And after several meetings, one of the senior executives asked Jeff, he said, look, every time we come into this meeting, there's this chair there. What is with this spare chair? And Jeff said, I'm really glad you asked me that, because that represents the customer. In every meeting that we run, in every meeting that we do, we've always got to have the spare chair there in our mind. We've always got to have the customer in our mind, because we're a customer business. And that's the importance of customer service. You have to put the customer first in most cases, because that's the key to you being successful in customer service. There's a myth around providing customer service is expensive. Well, I believe it's a lot more expensive to acquire a customer than to look after one you've already got. And I think a lot of businesses fall into this habit of punishing their customers because they're afraid of the 2% that complain. The reality is there's 98% that love them. And I think that that's a real trap that people fall into. And you've also got to remember that people genuinely remember good service long after the price is paid. And so if you have a customer mindset around service, it's really, really critical. And I always encourage my salespeople and the companies that I work with that do things a little differently. Just be a little different in your customer service. And there's stories that I could spend hours on telling you about great customer services that I've been exposed to. There's one particular story that I was involved in putting on a presentation inside a big venue, a big hotel. And my business partner rang the reception and said, look, is there any opportunity for someone to send up some nugget? Because I'm just after breakfast and I want to clean my new shoes and get all ready. And the person at reception said, no problems, yes, we'll get that organised for you. So my business partner went off to breakfast. He came back an hour later and all his shoes had been cleaned by someone inside the hotel. Now that's customer service. That's being just a little bit different. That's having a customer service mindset. So just some tips that I give clients often is, want to build relationships with their clients? Send them thank you notes. Handwritten thank you notes to their home address, thanking them for their business. 2 a week. That's all you have to do. Get your people to do 2 a week. So if they're dealing with customers, just get them to do 2 a week. That's all you need to do. Do surveys. Go back and ask your clients, why are you buying off me? And reward them for that. Give them vouchers and give them free stuff from your business. The third thing is, make sure that you are always available to them if they want you. There's one particular company that I work with, a media company. They had a 24-hour on-call number, 0800 1800 number, that you could call that media company anytime you like if you had a problem. They probably had 3 or 4 calls a month, but it was perception. And that's what really good customer service is about. It's creating the right perception about you versus your competition. So customer service is certainly a key to successful selling.